Hi, I'm Joe Graydon.
And I'm Terry Graydon. This podcast of the People's Pharmacy is brought to you by Squatty Potty Toilet Stools. They create healthy toilet posture for fast, easy elimination. Learn more about toilet posture and health at squattypotty.com. That's SQUATTYPOTTY.com.
We think of spices as adding flavor to a meal, but new research suggests that some spices may have important healing properties. This is the People's Pharmacy with Terry and Joe Graydon.
Turmeric is the yellow spice that forms the base for curry powder. Americans find it in yellow mustard. One of its key components is curcumin. Could it have anti-inflammatory and anti-cancer activity?
Thyme, cayenne, cinnamon, fennel, ginger, and other familiar spices may also have biological activity. Does your kitchen pantry hold unexpected ways to promote good health, from easing joint pain to controlling blood sugar?
Coming up on the People's Pharmacy, the health news that matters to you, with your calls and questions.
First, this news.
In the People's Pharmacy Health headlines, attorneys general from 14 states are begging the U.S. Congress to do something about regulating herbal supplements. Their petition was given urgency by the recent results from a study conducted at the request of the New York Attorney General. Dietary supplements containing herbal extracts from 4 major retail chains were analyzed with DNA barcoding. The tests did not detect the plants listed on the label. The Attorneys General asked that congressional subcommittees on product safety and health review FDA oversight and consider enhanced quality assurance programs. Ever since 1994, when Congress passed the Dietary Supplement and Health Education Act, FDA has taken a very different approach to regulating supplements than it takes on prescription and over-the-counter drugs.
When the Institute of Medicine reviewed data on vitamin D, the panel concluded that adults needed no more than 600 international units of the vitamin daily. Now, a group of scientists from Creighton University and the University of California, San Diego are presenting data claiming that the IOM experts underestimated needs by an order of magnitude. The nutrition researchers examined data from a different population than that used in the initial calculations and came up with a recommendation of approximately 7,000 international units per day of vitamin D. They point out that even though this is dramatically higher than past recommendations, it's substantially below the upper level as established as safe by the Institute of Medicine.
Some men diagnosed with low-grade prostate cancer may be able to keep it from progressing by taking extra vitamin D. A study of 37 men who had chosen prostatectomies randomly assigned them to take either 4,000 international units of vitamin D a day or a placebo. After 2 months, they underwent their operations. All of these men had low Gleason scores on their biopsies. That's a measure of cancer aggressiveness. In the vitamin D supplementation group, Gleason scores on the prostates that were removed were often even lower, while the prostate tumors in the men taking placebo scored the same or even a bit higher. There were changes in many markers of inflammation with lower levels in the men taking vitamin D. The scientists hypothesized that vitamin D supplementation lowers inflammation, taking the heat out of low-grade prostate cancers. With more research, vitamin D supplementation during active surveillance might be enough to keep low-grade prostate cancer under control for a significant period of time.
Lumbar spinal stenosis, a condition in which narrowing of the spinal column crowds the spinal cord, causing serious pain, is frequently treated with spinal surgery. Spinal stenosis is not unusual as people age, but the surgery has a 15% complication rate in older individuals. Now, a study of 169 patients shows that physical therapy is just as effective as surgery at easing the low back pain caused by lumbar spinal stenosis. It's far safer, however. All of the patients have been planning to have surgery, but agreed to be randomly assigned to get surgery promptly or to try physical therapy. They were all at least 50 years old and had no heart disease, dementia, or cancers. Those assigned to physical therapy had twice-weekly sessions for 6 weeks. During the 2 years of the study, just over half of those who started with physical therapy opted to follow up with surgery. Both groups had similar levels of pain reduction and other symptoms at the end of the 2 years.
A case report published in the New England Journal of Medicine has answered the question, is it possible to drink too much iced tea? The cautionary case was that of a 56-year-old man who developed fatigue, weakness, and muscle aches. The mysterious symptoms were caused by kidney failure, and the doctors treating him traced the kidney damage to his habit of drinking 16 large glasses of iced tea daily. That gave him more than 1,500 milligrams of oxalate on a daily basis, much more than the usual 40 to 50 milligrams. The large amount of oxalate formed crystals in his kidneys, causing inflammation and scarring. The man ended up needing kidney dialysis. Experts say that it's fine to drink 1 or 2 glasses of iced tea, but they caution against excessive consumption. And that's the health news from the People's Pharmacy this week. Welcome to the People's Pharmacy. I'm Terry Graydon. I'm a medical anthropologist.
And I'm Joe Graydon. I'm a pharmacologist. The spice trade dates back thousands of years. People in Asia and Northeast Africa prized cinnamon, ginger, pepper, turmeric, and cardamom. These spices were so highly valued that the spice trade was actually a major driver of the world economy.
People were right to pay attention to these spices. Not only did they make food taste good, they also were used to help preserve foods and as medicines. Now, scientists are finding out how these fascinating compounds may work to help us stay healthy.
To find out more about one specific spice, we turn to Dr. A.J. Goyal. He's director of the Center for Gastrointestinal Research and director of the Center for Epigenetics, Cancer Prevention, and Cancer Genomics at the Baylor Research Institute. He's professor of medicine at Baylor University Medical Center.
Welcome to the People's Pharmacy, Dr. Goyal.
Hello. Thanks for having me on the show.
Dr. Goyal, it's nice to have you back. And I guess the first question is, how in the world did you get interested in studying the molecular biology and the anti-cancer?
Welcome to the People's Pharmacy, Dr. Goyal.
Hello. Thanks for having me on the show.
Dr. Goyal, it's nice to have you back. And I guess the first question is, how in the world did you get interested in studying the molecular biology and the anti-cancer? We are having some technical difficulties with Dr. Goyal. Dr. Goyal,
really just with the interview that we did.
Our recording sometimes doesn't go as expected. Our engineer is working on it. But in the meantime, Dr. Goyal has revealed some fascinating new work that he's done at Baylor with regard to colorectal cancer.
Well, what he did, and hopefully we'll have a chance to hear it soon, to hear him explaining it, is he found out not only that, but also exactly how curcumin, which is what we think, at least one of the active ingredients in turmeric, how curcumin can make a chemotherapeutic regimen, which is almost always used for colorectal cancer, a drug called 5-fluorouracil, how it makes it work even better than it normally does. So giving curcumin together with 5-fluorouracil is much more effective, at least in the laboratory setting.
Yes, and this has really profound implications for chemotherapy in general, because it may not just be colorectal cancer, but in particular for this kind of hard-to-treat cancer, it really does enhance the effect. We'd like to hear from you. If you have a question about turmeric or its active ingredient, curcumin, you can give us a call. The number's 888-472-3366. You can email us, radio@peoplespharmacy.com, or contact us via Twitter @peoplespharmacy. Do you use turmeric in your cooking. For example, if you're making curries. Have you tried it for arthritis? We'd love to hear your story. Again, the calls are open. Our lines are open for you at 888-472-3366.
And Joe, we do have an email from Carol in Ashland, Oregon. She says, does the turmeric have to be cooked for it to be efficacious? Are capsules of turmeric equally beneficial compared to cooked turmeric? Now, of course, when you do cook the turmeric in food, you are combining it with a little bit of fat. You may be combining it with some other spices, particularly black pepper, and that improves its bioavailability, its ability for your body to absorb it. Some capsules will also have that. Pay attention to that. Not all of them do.
Well, the bioavailability of turmeric or curcumin is such that
it's not absorbed that well.
You have to really do your homework. I would suggest that if you're going to take capsules or whatever form you want to take it in, whether it's a capsule or a pill or any kind of supplement, take it with meals and try to take it with meals that actually have fat in them. So that would be one way to approach it. Terry, do you have any other indications for turmeric or curcumin that people...
Absolutely. There are many things that people have used turmeric for or curcumin and found that it can be really helpful. Psoriasis is one of them. We have a lot of reports from people who have called us or written us over the years to say that they started taking turmeric and their psoriasis really cleared up. A lot of people find that it's useful for arthritis or other kinds of inflammatory pain, bursitis, knee pain, that kind of thing. People have found it useful for muscle cramps. People use it topically for things, but it does stain. It stains horribly, in fact.
Yeah,
so
if you're going to
you need to be really careful.
Turmeric on your skin, you better cover it up or you're going to mess up your clothes and your sheets.
Now, also, we got this interesting email. This person says, I suffer from both allergies and asthma. I'm usually miserable in the spring. I started taking 2,000 international units of vitamin D daily several months ago. I'm also taking turmeric capsules. This spring, I've had no allergies, no sinus infections, no asthma problems at all. And it turns out, Joe, that in animal studies, turmeric prevents the release of histamine from mast cells. And vitamin D also has anti-inflammatory effects on smooth muscle cells in the airway. Both of those research was published in 2008, so we've known about it for a little while.
Now, I've also heard that turmeric has benefit against metabolic syndrome. First, what is metabolic syndrome, and how would turmeric be beneficial?
Well, metabolic syndrome is what happens when you have a large waist, suggesting that there's some belly fat there. You have high blood pressure, high cholesterol, not necessarily diabetes, but blood sugar starting to climb a little bit. That's metabolic syndrome. And exactly how turmeric helps, I don't know. But there are a pair of very recent articles that have been published from Pakistan. Pakistani researchers have found that a combination of turmeric and something they call black seeds or kalonji is effective in lowering blood pressure and blood lipids and helping people lose weight, or in one of their studies, helping fat rats lose weight.
Ooh, we got to keep those fat rats as thin as possible. Let's go to the phones, 888-472-3366. Reverend Fred in Madison, Wisconsin, welcome to the People's Pharmacy. What's your story about turmeric?
Hello, Joe and Terry. I've been using turmeric along with my other go-to general remedy raw garlic for a number of years, and turmeric has the advantage of, not having that anti-social raw garlic odor.
Right.
Just recently, many people in Madison and the upper Midwest have been getting what some of us call the dread mahocus. It's some kind of upper respiratory thing. Some people call it the flu. Some people call it a bad cold. Everybody around me was getting it, and then I began to get kind of a rough, scratchy throat. So I just immediately started to take 1 tablespoon of turmeric 2 to 3 times a day in some applesauce or yogurt.
Wow, that's a lot of turmeric.
And within 2 or 3 days, my throat scratchiness had gone away, and it never really developed.
Reverend Fred, thanks so much for telling us about your experience. Don't keep taking that much turmeric, because it is high in oxalate and could cause kidney stones if you took that high a dose for a long time. But the use against scratchy throat, cough, or a cold is something that we have heard about before, isn't it, Joe?
We have, but we do caution. Too much turmeric or turmeric, however you prefer to pronounce it, may interact with some drugs like warfarin, a blood thinner, and we've heard from some people that they develop an allergic reaction to it. Liver enzymes may go up, and some people develop digestive upset. So there are some complications, some cautions associated with it. Thanks so much for the call. We go to David in Somerville, South Carolina. Hi, David. What's on your mind?
Hello. How are you, Joe and Terry?
We're doing well. What's up?
Sorry.
Go right ahead.
Okay. I hate to say I've been using turmeric for a while, and actually around the same dose as the previous gentleman. And I was using it because of the curcumin as an anti-inflammatory, because my joints were always affected. And it really helped, especially like when I did yoga, as hopes to alleviate my stiffness and everything. And turmeric played a big part in that.
Well, that sounds really great. And it is known to have powerful anti-inflammatory activity. So that is absolutely right on.
Well, I'm a big advocate of it, and I even, like the guy with the itchy throat, I actually had the flu this year, and my wife took Tamiflu, and I took turmeric for 3 days. That's all I took was that and activated charcoal, and it actually I knocked out the flu in 3 days, and she kept the flu for almost 2 weeks.
Oh, my goodness, even with the Tamiflu. Well, that's fascinating. David, thank you so much for the call.
Thank you very much.
Bye-bye. Well, we are talking about spices for life today on the People's Pharmacy. Are you an advocate of cinnamon? Do you like ginger? What about cardamom or black pepper? Have you ever used it to stop bleeding from a cut? We'd love to hear your story. How about chili peppers? Are you a chili head like me? Do you like hot stuff? Give us a call. The number's 888-472-3366. You can email us if our lines are full at radio@peoplespharmacy.com or via Twitter @People's Pharmacy. We're talking spices today. Turmeric, cinnamon, ginger, you name it, we'll talk about it. Do you love garlic? Let's hear your story. You're listening to the People's Pharmacy.
You're listening to the People's Pharmacy with Joe and Terry Graydon.
If you like the information you hear when you listen to the People's Pharmacy, you may also enjoy our book published by National Geographic. It's the People's Pharmacy Quick and Handy Home Remedies, available online at peoplespharmacy.com or at your favorite bookstore.
Welcome Welcome back to the People's Pharmacy. I'm Terry Graydon.
And I'm Joe Graydon. The People's Pharmacy is made possible by Redix Industries, makers of utterly smooth creams and lotions that moisturize deeply to make dry skin feel soft and smooth. The number's 800-345-7339, online at uttercream.com.
And by Squatty Potty Toilet Step Stools, creating healthy toilet posture for fast, easy elimination. More information about how toilet posture affects your health at squattypotty.com.
If you'd like to order a CD of this show, you can call 800-732-2334, today's show number 988, or find it online at peoplespharmacy.com.
Today, we're talking about the health headlines that matter to you, and we're focusing on the health benefits of spices. We invite you to join the conversation at 888-472-3366. Email us, radio@peoplespharmacy.com, or you can get in touch through Twitter. We're at People's Pharmacy. That number again, 888-472-3366. We were talking with Dr. A.J. Goyal, Director of the Center for Gastrointestinal Research and Director of the Center for Epigenetics, Cancer Prevention, and Cancer Genomics at the Baylor Research Institute. We asked him about using turmeric for cancer prevention and other ailments.
Dr. Goyal, a lot of our listeners have heard about the health benefits of turmeric, or curcumin in particular, the active ingredient in turmeric, and they're interested in it maybe not just to enhance chemotherapy, but maybe even to prevent cancer, and maybe not just to prevent colorectal cancer, but a number of other cancers as well. Is there any data to support that?
Yes, absolutely. And I've been researching curcumin for a long time, and I would say that most of these herbs, whether we're talking about curcumin or anything else, I think they probably work best in a preventative setting. And my interest is understanding gastrointestinal cancers, primarily colorectal cancer, pancreatic cancer, and so forth. But there are hundreds and hundreds of studies, not just few, hundreds of studies that curcumin helps prevent virtually every cancer I have seen or read about. And it is quite simple, because on a cellular level, whether it's a pancreatic cell or a colon cell or a breast cancer cell or a cervical cancer cell, all cancers share a lot of commonality. There's a lot of overlap in terms of how cancers evolve. So it's not surprising that curcumin works so effectively, so beautifully in preventing cancers. So I think if I have to bet my money, I would say one should consider taking some of these supplements proactively in terms of preventing cancers. But there is some evidence, including the recent study we have published, that in addition to possibly preventing cancers, there is some therapeutic benefit too by taking curcumin along with chemotherapy. A lot of this science is so far in preclinical models in animals and so forth, and we need to have more human trials to validate these claims.
Part of the problem, of course, is that you can go to any health food store, even a lot of pharmacies, and find curcumin. And it's pretty inexpensive, relatively speaking. Whereas if you had to go to the pharmacy and get a prescription drug for treating cancer, it could cost literally thousands of dollars. So there's perhaps not as much incentive. You are one of the few researchers who has really been in the trenches with this for a very long time. I know our listeners are interested. How much curcumin would they need to take? And are there any brands in particular that are higher quality? There's a lot of concern now about quality of spices and herbs.
Joe, I think that's a very important question, and I think this must be addressed. So in terms of how much quantity of curcumin one should consider, I think there's somewhat lack of clear understanding, and I think that it's very difficult to give a precise answer that one should take X milligrams or X grams of it. But in general, based on the studies we have published recently, we have done studies in patients with cancer. We have done human studies in patients with arthritis. We have done human studies in patients with depression. In most of these studies, we have used 500 milligram twice a day of curcumin. So that's about 1 gram curcumin a day, which is extremely safe. There are clinical studies done in humans where people have shown that up to 12 grams of curcumin is absolutely safe, no side effects. So having said that, I would say that one should not think always that more is better. So most of the clinical studies we have published recently, they have been around 1 gram curcumin every day. Now, the second part of your question, are all curcumins the same? And the answer is no. One should be very careful when they go to a health food store to pick a curcumin that they have to consider a few things. First, is this curcumin all natural, or were some harsh synthetic chemicals used in its extraction from turmeric? So one has to be absolutely careful that they should try to purchase a curcumin preparation which is all natural. Second, one should consider curcumin has one limitation, that it is poorly absorbed in our bodies. So one should consider looking at a curcumin which has higher absorption rates. So if it absorbs better, you're going to have benefits much longer and many-fold more than standard, cheaper versions of curcumin. Third, it should stay in your body longer. So it should be all natural, should be better absorbed, should stay in your body longer. And there are several preparations of curcumins such as these out there. But in my studies, I've used a unique preparation of curcumin called BCM95. And I've used this curcumin for over the years in all my studies for all the obvious reasons I just mentioned. It is all natural. It is absorbed 7 to 10 times better than standard curcumin, and it stays in the body longer.
Dr. Goyal, we're very glad to know that the BCM95 is a trustworthy preparation of curcumin. We need to ask you if you have any conflict of interest with the company that makes it.
I absolutely don't. I do serve on the advisory board of one of the companies who makes it, but other than that, I do not have any conflict. But yeah, my only conflict would be, that's why I'm trying to say that BCM95, but BCM95 curcumin is sold by multiple companies. So BCM95 is the raw ingredient. Now, the finished product is sold by many companies, and I do serve as an advisory board member on one of the companies named Europharma.
Dr. Goyal, you alluded to the fact that there might be other benefits from turmeric or curcumin besides the anti-cancer effect. You mentioned arthritis, so I assume that there may be an anti-inflammatory effect. We've also heard over the years that there may be some potential against Alzheimer's disease or dementia. Could you give us the range of possibilities with curcumin?
Absolutely. So let me put it this way, because this is a question which I'm asked all the time, whether curcumin can help besides cancer. And the answer is, let me give you the answer, that I've yet to find a disease for which curcumin has not been studied, no matter how rare the disease is. Cancers, Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, diabetes, you name it, any chronic illness. And in all of these studies, I would say majority of these studies, it has shown therapeutic benefit. And the reason is, you alluded to this in your question, because it is probably one of the most potent naturally occurring anti-inflammatory compound. And when we talk about chronic illnesses, most of the chronic illnesses have an underlying theme of chronic inflammation. So chronic inflammation feeds most of the chronic illnesses we talk about, whether it's cancer, Alzheimer's, dementia, Parkinson's, depression. So if we can control that low levels of chronic inflammation, we can theoretically expect that any compound which can do that safely, effectively, can have benefit. And that's why curcumin works in all of these health conditions.
Dr. Goyal, there are some countries where turmeric is a part of everyday dietary habits. And I have to admit, I happen to love turmeric. I mean, the flavor, the color, everything about it just makes my tongue so happy. And my tail wags when I eat food with turmeric. One would assume, therefore, that if there's been epidemiology, that places that consume large quantities of turmeric might have less of the chronic illnesses that we are so prone to here in the West. Is there any data to support that?
Yes, there's actually, I'm glad you asked this question. So, yes, there is a lot of data, but this data continues to, there could be some bias how it was collected and so forth, but nonetheless, there's tons and tons of data that people who consume some of these botanicals, particularly curcumin, which is mostly consumed in Southeast Asia and particularly in India. So there are epidemiological evidence that overall cancer burden in India is several-fold lower than what we have in the U.S. So whether we are talking about colon cancer, for example, can be anywhere between 10 to 15 times lower in India versus the U.S. If you talk about breast cancer, 5 to 7 times lower in India compared to U.S. and so forth. So it's not about specific cancers, but virtually across the globe, most cancers, the overall incidence of colon cancer and other cancers is much, much lower in India versus U.S. We talk about Alzheimer's. Alzheimer's is much lower and almost non-existent in Indian population compared to what we have in U.S. and other Western countries. So yes, there's quite a bit of epidemiological evidence that some of these chronic illnesses are a lot less common in India versus U.S., and this may be in part due to curcumin, but I would be cautious to say that it may not be entirely due to curcumin, because people in that part of the world eat other herbs too. They eat other medicinal spices too. But curcumin being an integral part of every Indian meal probably plays a much more predominant role in probably protecting these people from some of these health conditions.
Dr. A.J. Goyal, thank you very much for talking with us on the People's Pharmacy today.
Thank you very much for having me on the show. I really enjoyed it.
You've been listening to Dr. A.J. Goyal, Director of the Center for Gastrointestinal Research and Director of the Center for Epigenetics, Cancer Prevention, and Cancer Genomics at the Baylor Research Institute. He's Professor of Medicine at Baylor.
If you'd like to join the conversation, our lines are open at 888-472-3366. If you can't get through, you can email us, radio@peoplespharmacy.com, or send us a message through Twitter @peoplespharmacy.
And we go to Schuyler, Virginia. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. Bobby, welcome to the People's Pharmacy.
Hi, Joe and Terry.
Hi, Bobby.
It's good to talk to you. I've been taking turmeric in the form of a teaspoon every morning in my omelet for inflammation due to severe arthritis in my hands and wrists. I've been doing this about 9 months now, and the change is quite remarkable. When I started, I had been doing, I was involved in medical research at the University of Virginia and was wearing tight latex gloves every day for the last 20 years. And I had reached the point where when I would take the gloves off and change them multiple times during the day, I was almost in tears.
Uh-huh.
And I am retired now, but I spent the morning yesterday out pulling up weeds all day. And it's really made a difference. It's not, I still have arthritis, but the change is remarkable.
Oh, well, that is wonderful to hear, Bobby. Thanks so much for letting us know.
And in our book, Recipes and Remedies from the People's Pharmacy, if I'm not mistaken, Terry, we have a turmeric scramble that is so pretty because it has that lovely golden color.
Exactly right. It's the same way of taking turmeric that Bobby is using. And Joe, we've got an email from Barbara who says, my husband has arthritis. He's been taking turmeric supreme from Gaia Herbs. He wasn't sure it made a difference until we went on a trip and he forgot to bring his turmeric along. His feet and hands were very painful, but after 2 days of taking more turmeric, the arthritic pain disappeared.
Excellent. We go to the phones, 888-472-3366. Jeannie in Salem, Wisconsin. Welcome to the People's Pharmacy. What's this about, coffee grounds?
Hi, that's how we take our daily dose of turmeric. We put about a half a teaspoon and just sprinkle it over our coffee grounds, and it gives great flavor to the coffee, and I feel like it's an easy way to get a little bit in every day. Then we also use the brand USANA Health Sciences, which mixes glucosamine and turmeric together in a very potent combination.
Well, it would definitely give an interesting flavor to coffee. I think I'm going to have to give that a try. I have used cinnamon in my coffee, but never turmeric.
We put the two together sometimes, too.
Oh, cool. Hey, thank you so much for the call, Jeannie.
Have a good day.
Bye-bye. And we go to...
we're going to go to Charlotte, North Carolina. Lou, welcome to the People's Pharmacy. How have you used turmeric?
Oh, hi, Joe and Terry. We talked about 6 months ago, and my dog had found out that it was good for arthritis. I gave it to him, and he started getting rid of his lipomas. I think we
Wow.
talked about that. Yeah, the fatty tumors. And since then, he has had a mast cell tumor removed. And since then, which is 3 years ago now, he just turned 13. He is fine. There are no more recurrence, and he is running up and down hills like a puppy.
Well, Lou, that is wonderful. And particularly the mast cell. Often after a dog has had one mast cell tumor removed, they do frequently develop more. So it sounds like you're doing something helpful.
And my little one now, my 4-year-old, has lymphoma. She's got gastrointestinal lymphoma, and we are going through chemo with the CHOP series. And she is also being supplemented now with turmeric. And I'm working with my vet who does, naturopathic work to see if we can come up with a formula to keep her healthy.
Just what I was going to suggest is do work with the veterinarian. You really can't give dogs things that people take because some things are really pretty toxic to dogs, even things that seem simple like raisins or garlic. So you do need to work with your vet. But working with the vet, that makes a lot of sense.
Yes, but it's really good for dogs with arthritis, so that would be good for people out there whose dogs are aging.
Well, sometimes we hear from health professionals and they say, oh, it's a placebo effect. You just think it's helping, but you're convinced that it's really made a difference, right, Lou?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, the lipomas alone just have gone away. They've shrunk, so that's visible.
Yeah, and I don't think dogs could react to a placebo by having their tumor shrink.
Be careful, Joe.
Yes, there is a veterinarian who listens in, and he sometimes spanks us if we don't recognize that.
What he says is not that the dog is experiencing a placebo effect, but that the owner is experiencing a placebo effect. Quite possible.
So, Lou, are you experiencing a placebo effect?
Actually, I'm not, because, it's the same with that rescue remedy, if you've ever heard of that. That's my dog in the background. The flower remedies, the Bach rescue remedy, you could say it's a placebo on people, but when you see a dog react and their gums turn red again, they can't tell you it's a placebo.
Okay.
Lou, thank you so much for the call. We appreciate it. Bye-bye.
Okay. Bye-bye.
We are talking about spices today on the People's Pharmacy. We welcome your calls, your questions. Are you a fan of cinnamon? Perhaps you like garlic. What about boswellia? 888-472-3366 is the number to call. Do you have a short email before the break, Terry?
I do, Joe. Actually, I've got an email from Jessica who says, for over 15 years, I've taken a half teaspoon of turmeric powder every morning after I scrape my tongue and brush my teeth. I wash it down with a gulp of water. Now, she does want to know if this is the best way to take it, and I think probably we'd say if you want to get the maximum benefits, you want to go with something like the formula that Dr. Goyle recommended, the BCM 95, because it's been formulated for maximal absorption.
And by the way, Dr. Goyle's name is spelled Goel.
And I will put a link to his research on our website.
We need to take a short break. When we come back, we'll talk about some other spices, and we'd like to hear about your favorites and why. If you'd like to join the conversation, you can give us a call, 888-472-3366. You can email us, radio@peoplespharmacy.com, or join us via Twitter. We're at People's Pharmacy.
You're listening to the People's Pharmacy with Joe and Terry Graydon. If you value the health information you get when you listen to the People's Pharmacy, consider subscribing to our email newsletter. You'll get the latest health news and information on upcoming podcasts delivered to your inbox twice a week. Look for the link at peoplespharmacy.com. Welcome back to the People's Pharmacy. I'm Terry Graydon.
And I'm Joe Graydon. The People's Pharmacy is brought to you in part by Redix Industries, makers of utterly smooth creams and lotions, helping dry, cracked skin feel utterly soft and smooth. The number's 800-345-7339, online at uttercream.com.
And by Squatty Potty Toilet Step Stools, creating healthy toilet posture for fast, easy elimination. More information about how toilet posture affects your health at squattypotty.com.
You can purchase a CD of the show. Just call 800-732-2334. Today's show number 988. Or find it online at peoplespharmacy.com.
We're talking today about the stories behind the health headlines, and we're focusing in particular on the health benefits of culinary spices. If you have a question or a story to share about black pepper, ginger, cinnamon, or any other spice, you can give us a call. The number is 888-472-3366. You can email us, radio@peoplespharmacy.com, or send us a message through Twitter. We're at People's Pharmacy.
Spices are wonderful to make healthy food taste delicious. We chatted with Dr. Christopher Gardner about that earlier this week. He's professor of medicine at the Stanford Prevention Research Center. He's a nutrition scientist who has conducted randomized controlled human nutrition trials with more than 1,700 participants in the past 20 years and previously served on the American Heart Association's Nutrition Committee.
Dr. Gardner, I have to tell you that the gypsy soup recipe that you offered us several years ago as part of our project, it's in Recipes and Remedies from the People's Pharmacy, is so delicious that it makes converts. It's made converts all over the country. Whenever we make it, whenever we talk about it, when we get somebody else to make it, people love it. So here's this wonderful, delicious soup that has all kinds of great flavors in it. It's got paprika, it's got turmeric, it's got garlic and onion, basil and cinnamon and cayenne and bay leaf and vegetables, all kinds of vegetables. How could it be better? It couldn't. It's wonderful. So what is the role of all these wonderful spices to make this delicious soup?
Oh, it's an enormous part. You could put all those vegetables together. I mean, so I've been a vegetarian for a long time, and I occasionally go someplace and someone says, you know what? We heard you were a vegetarian, and we are so ready for you. We have a plate of steamed vegetables for you. And a huge grin appears on their face. They're so happy that they've accommodated me. And I look at this overcooked, bland set of mush, and I have to say thank you. Thank you for accommodating me.
Right.
But don't you know that this could have had volatile properties and this could just dance in your nose and your nostrils and your olfactory system? Yeah, no, the spices are huge in this. And let me tell you about a new business that I found locally. So one of my neighbors, they have an Indian heritage, and they have this fabulous new thing. It's Waverly Kitchens, and it's a packet that only has spices. And there's a top and a bottom half, and one of the halves that you open up is all seeds. And you put it in the pan in oil, and first you put the whole seeds, and you let them crackle in the oil. And you cut up a bunch of vegetables, and then you add the vegetables, and then you open the other half of the packet, and you add the other half, which is just kind of like gypsy soup. It's the turmeric, it's the curry, it's the paprika, it's the cinnamon, it's the nutmeg. And within minutes, anybody walking in the house says, okay, that isn't just vegetables. That is just something intoxicating. What is going on here? I want to eat that. And so, yeah, the spices and herbs just make the difference and make it so you can make that change and stick with it. Absolutely.
And of course, if you're spicing your food like that, you don't need to leave out the salt altogether, but you won't need quite as much to make it taste good.
And that's something that we certainly would like the culinary staff to help us work on, because that is an easy way to make foods more hyper-palatable, which is a word that gets used. It's like, I really want to eat more and more of this because of the salty taste appeals to me in that way. You could do that with herbs. And you know, for a culinary professional, that's right up their alley. Let's lower the sodium and see to it that people don't feel like there's any loss of taste. In fact, there's an enhancement of taste because we used our skills, our food chemistry, our herbal skills to make this food taste even better than the old one that had very few herbs and a lot of salt. Sure.
You know, going back, literally hundreds, perhaps thousands of years, people have been using these spices, in some cases to preserve food, but in other cases just to make it taste better. So this is part of our history. It
is, and it was lost because, to a certain extent, That's more ingredients. That's I don't actually even know what the problems are, right? But the spice trade, the things where ships traveled many, many leagues to come back and bring the spices that were like gold because that's what they made. They turned the food into fabulous things. So I'm not a good food historian, but Joe and Terry, you're right. I think this would be back to our roots, back to the things that not only preserved food but made it a lot more enjoyable. I think we've lost a little bit of that, and I think the culinary world is ready to bring it back to us.
Dr. Christopher Gardner, thank you so much for talking with us on the People's Pharmacy.
Happy to be here, Joe and Terry. Thanks again.
You've been listening to Dr. Christopher Gardner, professor of medicine at the Stanford Prevention Research Center. The gypsy soup recipe was adapted from one by Molly Katzen.
And Joe, we do have an email from Philip Mendershausen in Dallas. He says, I would like to know whether there's any independent confirmation of the substantially reduced rates of prostate, lung, and breast cancer and dementia reported to exist in India in comparison to the USA, as reported a few minutes ago on your program. Otherwise, I remain very circumspect about the data reported by Dr. Goyle, and that should be stressed. Now, we have to say we have not looked at that epidemiology ourselves. However, when we spoke with Dr. Murali Doraiswamy about Alzheimer's disease a few years ago, he did indicate that there was a lower rate of Alzheimer's disease in India than there is in the U.S.
And Dr. Doraiswamy is, of course, one of the foremost neuroscientists in the U.S. today at Duke University. And just look at Dr. Goyle's research, and you will discover that it is highly, highly scientific and in a peer-reviewed journal, and we will have a link to it later on our website. Back to the phones, 888-472-3366. We go to Viola, Wisconsin.
Darlene, welcome to the People's Pharmacy.
Thank you very much. I would like to have your input and comments on Boswellia, especially the standardized extract of the boswellic acids for anti-inflammatory properties.
Well, Darlene, it does have anti-inflammatory properties, no question about that. For people who aren't familiar with Boswellia, it is made from the resin of a tree that grows in India and Africa, and it is related to myrrh.
How do you spell myrrh?
Oh, myrrh. Everybody knows how to spell myrrh. M-Y-R-R-H.
It's like frankincense and myrrh.
It's related to frankincense as well. They're all related, all three of them. It does have very impressive anti-inflammatory properties. We have received reports from people who found that it really helped arthritis pain, people who have used it for fibromyalgia successfully, people have used it for other types of inflammation and found it quite helpful.
Okay, Darlene?
Thank you very much.
You're very welcome. Bye-bye. And let's go to Peggy in Wendell, North Carolina. Hi, Peggy.
Hi, and I hope that you're having a good day today. We're thoroughly enjoying your program. I wanted to report to you a situation that I had on a New Year's Eve a couple of years ago. I was slicing some rolls and sliced my thumb instead. It was bleeding like a stuck pig, and I had remembered what you had said about using black pepper, and I opened that jar and started pouring it on there, and I had to use it several times. But finally, the bleeding was staunched, and I put a little butterfly bandage on it. Next morning, I went to the ER. The doctor walked in, he took one look, and he said, "You don't even need a stitch." In fact, he called me Peggy Pepper because he said it just healed up naturally on its own. So,
that's a wonderful story.
Pepper, but anyway, it did not even leave a scar, and this cut was clean to the bone. I mean, you could actually see, down in there, and it was just terrible. But that black pepper worked. It was a charm.
Peggy, we are always so happy to hear about things that work, and we're always delighted, and I'm actually always really relieved when someone calls and says, well, I used the black pepper and it really worked, because I'm not sure it's a good idea to actually use black pepper on a cut that's clean to the bone. I think that really requires medical attention.
Immediate medical attention. It scares the dickens out of me, but this is not the first time we have heard a serious cut has led to success with black pepper and no scar, which seems almost hard to imagine. Now, we did hear from one physician who said, who worked in an emergency department, and said, I have seen people come in having used black pepper with infections. Don't do it. So we do have to add that caution, despite the fact that we have heard from many people, like Peggy, that it does the job.
Well, Peggy, thanks so much for sharing your success story.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Bye-bye. Let's go to Chapel Hill, North Carolina. Hi, Myrta. What's up? Hello, Myrta.
Hello. Sorry. Hi, Joe and Terry.
What's your story?
Well, it's a testimonial. In 2006, I was diagnosed with rectal cancer, and it was already one lymph node was compromised, so it's a stage 3, right?
Mm-hmm.
And what they offered me as chemo treatment was the 5-fluorouracil and something else. I am a scientist. I don't like those drugs too much. Other people may think otherwise. Anyhow, I said, no, that's not for me. But one thing that I did is that I changed my diet, and I incorporated turmeric into it. Ever since, I am cancer-free with no chemo treatment, and I buy my turmeric on my Spice Bazaar, local Spice Bazaar. So I don't use any formulation, just a spoonful in the morning with soy milk. Doesn't taste good. But
okay, but you manage.
I don't know if I had done the work. I am just one data point.
Uh-huh.
But I think it's good. That's my take on turmeric.
Well, Myrta, we really appreciate you sharing your story, and of course, Dr. Goyle's research was done. Not so much in patients as in, I think, tissue culture, but it was colorectal cancer cells. So there is a suggestion that, in fact, the turmeric can be quite helpful. I'm really glad it seems to be working for you.
Now, of course, Terry, as Myrta said, this is an N of 1.
Absolutely.
And no patient should ever try this without, of course, being under medical supervision, under oncology.
Oh, absolutely. And moreover, Joe, the any spices that you are planning to use medicinally while you are under cancer treatment, you must check with your oncology team, because some of these spices interact with the medications that they're using. You don't want to have an untoward interaction. And by the way, there are a lot of spices that can interact with anticoagulants as well, Joe.
Absolutely. Our lines are open for your calls and questions, as well as your stories, 888-472-3366. You can email us, radio@peoplespharmacy.com. And Terry, I do have an email from Mary Kay. She says, I was able to stop taking ibuprofen. I'd been on 800 milligrams 2 to 3 times a day for arthritis in my knees. Now that, ladies and gentlemen, is a very large dose. Since I added turmeric supreme with turmeric root extract and curcumin with turmeric essential oils.
Curcumin, perhaps?
Curcumin, that's it. That's the BCM 95. Mm-hmm. Apparently, she doesn't need the ibuprofen anymore and is doing well. So thank you very much for that, Mary Kay.
And we have an email from Wade who says, I enjoy and often use turmeric when cooking. The only side effect I have noticed is gas. It's not bad enough to keep me from using it, but the flatulence can be unpleasant for those around me. Is this a common problem? And what do you suggest to counteract it? Well, one thing we might suggest is perhaps using some fennel in the dishes that he is using the turmeric in. I don't know if it's a common problem. The other thing he might consider is another Indian spice called hing, which I believe is asafoetida. And that apparently can counteract the gas pretty well.
Here's a spelling bee. How do you spell asafoetida?
Well, we'll start with an A.
Right.
ASAFOETIDA. I think that's the right spelling.
And we've been told it just smells awful.
That's why the fetid is there in the middle of it.
100 years ago, teachers in rural parts of America would have children come in with a bag of asafoetida around their neck, and it was so smelly they could barely stand it. Back to the phones, 888-472-3366, Jamesville, Wisconsin. Hi, Becky. Welcome to the People's Pharmacy.
Good morning, Joe and Terry. How are you guys?
Nice to have you with us.
I'm calling because I use ginger on a regular basis with my little ones. I have 3 girls, and we get the usual upset tummies and whatnot, and they get a teaspoon of ginger and a little bit of applesauce, and it usually clears any kind of indigestion right up, and and it tastes good. They tell me it's spicy applesauce. Mom, I have an upset tummy. I need my spicy
applesauce.
Yep, and we also, in the wintertime, I'll take actual fresh ginger root, and I slice it real thin with lemon with the rind on, and I put it in pint mason jars, pour local honey over it, and I stick it in the back of the fridge. I'll make up 3 or 4 jars, and I let it sit and turn into jelly, and when they have a cold over the winter, I take a big scoop of that and put it right in water and make it into almost like a tea for them.
Boy, that sounds wonderful.
Thank you so much for sharing that. It does sound like a terrific solution. Terry, we have one last call. We can squeak in. Tracy in Norwood, North Carolina. What's this about ginger and cinnamon?
Hi, Joe and Terry. I quit using ginger and cinnamon in my coffee in the morning for about 2 or 3 months because I just hadn't been in my, day-to-day activities to do that. And my arthritis has come back. That gentleman the ginger has kept my arthritis at bay.
Well, thank you very much for sharing that. Sometimes when you don't take something is when you can tell that it was actually working.
When you notice. And by the way, Joe, there was research published last year showing that ginger and cinnamon as a common household remedy can treat Giardia lamblia. They actually did a rat research showing that the combination of ginger and cinnamon can get rid of this intestinal parasite. And by the way, ginger also can help prevent gastrointestinal cancer.
Well, that's all the time we have. I hope you had enjoyed our discussion of spices and all kinds of interesting remedies today on the People's Pharmacy. Thank you for listening. Lynn Siegel produced today's show. Sophie Copeland provided technical assistance. Al Wodarski is the engineer. Dave Graydon edits our interviews.
The People's Pharmacy is produced at the studios of North Carolina Public Radio, WUNC.
The People's Pharmacy theme music is by B.J. Liederman.
If you'd like to order a copy of today's show, you can call 800-732-2334. Today's show is number 988. That number again, 800-732-2334, or find it online at peoplespharmacy.com.
At the site, you can tell us what you think about today's show or find information on prescription drugs, herbs, and home remedies. We'll have a link to Dr. Goyle's research on colorectal cancer. You can also subscribe to the free podcast of our show or our free email newsletter. It's all there at peoplespharmacy.com. In Durham, North Carolina, I'm Joe Graydon.
And I'm Terry Graydon. Thanks very much for listening, and please tune in next week for Dr. Barry Sears and the Mediterranean Zone.
We hope you enjoyed this podcast. If so, please consider taking a minute to write a review on iTunes. And thanks for listening to The People's Pharmacy.